Hey, yo, it's the Memo Show. What's going on? I got another episode for you here today, and we talked to my colleague slash friend, I hope, Caleb Dietz. It's like diet with a Z. I go over to his house to interview him. He is a music producer, guitarist, really cool guy, really funny guy. He always comes up with these like cool polls at work. Like he'll ask us, you know, would you rather do this for $1 million or this for $10 million? I guess that's just how he passes the time there. Also, we sat there for like almost a half an hour in the back on the clock trying to figure out how to solve the Rubik's Cube. That's the kind of guy he is. But anyway, I go to his house, and it's literally a whole studio. So he's got his studio, and then there's two other people there who work in studios too. One does the mixing and mastering, or one does mixing, one does mastering. I don't know. You'll hear it in a minute. He explains the whole thing. It's called Lakehouse Studios. He came out here from Chicago to follow his dream, and he's doing it, man. It's freaking awesome. I can't wait for you to hear it. But just a side note, I was just recently on a podcast, Nathaniel Noble Jr.'s podcast to be exact, and I talk about some really heavy shit that's been happening to me for the past 4 years. What I've been going through with my daughter, and you know, I had to get that off my chest somewhere. I didn't want to do it on my show. I like to keep this show lighthearted. I like to keep it, you know, creative. I like to keep it separate, you know. So he gave me the platform to express myself and tell the world what's been going on. So if you want to hear a little piece of me that you may not have known about, go over there and listen to it. Nathaniel Noble Jr.'s podcast. He's a really cool guy. He actually gave me the push to start this podcast, so I thank him. And, you know, he told me to pay it forward. I just wanted to take a moment and thank everybody, too, that, for listening. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for sending stuff in. The podcast that I was on got, you know, a lot of good responses. People came out and told me about their experiences growing up with their dads and their moms, and it was really enlightening. And I just want to be all those parents' voice that don't have a voice, you know. So yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate you listening. Wasn't Rob a great guest last time? He was so fucking funny. Hopefully me and him have more in store for everyone, and keep listening, and you never know on the Memo Show.
Sound is all around us, everywhere. It beats at our eardrums until much of the time we're hardly conscious of it. But on this particular Saturday morning, Jimmy Foster suddenly became very conscious of it. Jimmy's ears were now wide open to the sounds around him. His eyes were open, too. Jimmy became curious about sound and decided to look up his cousin, Phil Hansen.
If sound is vibration, Phil, how does it get from one place to another?
Mostly through the air, Jimmy. You see, the vibration of my voice box makes the air vibrate between us. Then when the air vibrates your eardrum, you hear what I'm saying.
Vibration of voice box.
Here, I'll show you. We'll use a microphone, which is a sort of mechanical ear. Now, it picks up sound vibrations and changes them into electrical impulses. These go through the amplifier to the speaker, which changes them back into sound vibrations. There's a whole lot more to know about sound if you really want to go into the subject. But remember those three characteristics. And remember that all sound is vibration. It travels in waves of compressions and expansions. With those points in mind, Jimmy, you can go on to a thorough study of the nature of sound.
That's for me, the nature of sound.
Like back when I was a kid and I would be in the car with my dad, we would listen to oldies, right? And those were from like the 40s, 50s, like doo-wop stuff. That was oldies back then to me. I grew up in the 80s, or I was an adolescent in the 80s. And now, fucking Soundgarden, Nirvana, that's all considered like oldies. And it's weird how there's different genres of oldies now. Back then, oldies were oldies. You know, like you had...
Oldies felt like doo-wop or something like oldies in the 90s.
It's weird.
Like, it's weird. It's weird to hear like Nirvana's oldies, but also to me...
Well, it's like classic rock. It's like Nirvana is literally on the classic rock station. Yeah. Soundgarden, Nirvana, like all that shit. It's so crazy to me.
I discovered Nirvana late in my life, too. Like, because Kurt Cobain died a month before I was born.
My God.
So I didn't ever know what Nirvana was until I like watched a bunch of documentaries, and I was like, oh, this was a different thing compared to all the bright, shiny 80s, super harsh like highs, and then the grunge came in with Nirvana. Mm-hmm. So like to me that was a different thing. But like hearing that Nirvana's oldies just feels weird.
It is weird. It's very weird. Welcome back. To the podcast. Here. You were on my first episode. Oh yeah, I was. What I talk about break-ins? Yeah, I was nerding out about that album at that time. That was cool. It was awesome. I loved it. I'm glad you're back. Thanks for coming back on. And we are in your studio here in Studio City, Lakehouse Studios, right? Yeah, that's what we call it. Yeah, it's a pretty crazy setup. You want to paint a picture visually for the listeners? Yeah, we have 3 studios set up throughout the house here. We call it the Lake House because that's where we all met, at the Lake House. And so we have 3 different setups. 2 are primarily for production, and then 1 is for mixing and mastering. And we have 6 people in this house. It's quite a creative household. We all moved from Chicago out to LA, and this is our first experience in the Los Angeles area or the West Coast, and we've been here 2 years now. Well, it's pretty cool. So you do everything in house. You get clients, and then they come to like this room. You do guitars, and then the other room is mastering. And how many in total of you guys? All guys, girls too. So it's 3 guys, 3 girls. So we have 2. List them. Go ahead. Jack is music production. I'm Caleb, music production. JP is mixing and mastering, but he's also an artist. Annie is an artist, and we have Jill, she's a graphic designer, and we have Courtney, and she is finishing school, and she's done a bunch of fashion design. Well, actually, she just finished her school for marketing. Sweet. So it's all kind of in the creative field, and we're all figuring our way out while we're working here. And you're all from Chicago? We're all roughly from Chicago. Like, I didn't grow up in Chicago, but I lived there for 8-9 years. Because I went to school there. JP and Jack are from Michigan, but they moved to Chicago and worked at a recording studio there, and that's kind of where we met. And then Jill's from south side of Chicago, Annie's from Chicago suburbs, and Courtney's her cousin, and she lived all around from Texas, lived out here for a while, then was living in Chicago for a bit. So she's been moving around, but now we're all here in that's dope. Studio City, Sherman Oaks area. I love Chicago. I've been there once, and it was awesome experience. No, twice. I went there on tour once. We went through there. I think we did a show there somewhere. I don't remember where. Do you remember the venue? They're probably all changed. COVID shut down so many of them. What are some of your goals here in LA? As much as I love working for Apple, I would love to do music completely full time. When I was in Chicago, I was working full time at Apple. And when I moved here, I switched to part-time, and I've been doing music a majority of I say I work a full-time job at music and a part-time job at Apple. I would love to get to the point where I can have Apple be a pleasant chapter in my past. But till I get to that point, I'm very grateful for the job I have and all the friends I've made at Apple, for sure. Yeah, it's a cool job. Especially if you're doing something, on the side, it helps with that a lot, like to supplement that income. I know a lot of people do, Apple part-time and then their thing that they're passionate about, full-time. Like Nate was on, and he finally got the ability to just leave and do his thing full-time, which is great. It's a great dream. But when you're here in this studio, what's like a typical day like when everybody's hustling and bustling? So when everyone's here and around, it's usually a later morning.
there's not a lot of early mornings because there's a lot of late nights. So like usually we'll all be getting out to the kitchen and like in the back area and sipping on some coffee around like 10 a.m. and figuring out like what everyone's doing for the day or what's going on. And then we'll usually start our sessions around noon. We try to schedule sessions from like noon to 5-ish. Because when we first got out here, we were just like anything goes. Like people would show up, we'd get sessions starting at like 6 and we'd go to like midnight or 2 a.m. And that was just, is starting to get kind of crazy because you'd go to bed and someone would be having a session till like 3 in the morning. And it just was like, we're trying to figure out how to balance actually living with people and also having fully functioning running studios in the house. So then we kind of switched to, we try to do all our studio sessions from like noon to 5. And then if anything needs to go past that, it's just kind of like we communicate that. And we've all learned a lot about communicating when you live with 6 people.
I'm sure.
So like we'll work for a couple hours, and then usually if the artist will show up at like noon, and then they'll usually dip around 4 or 5 because they got lives and they got to get home to their families or go out and party or whatever they're going to do. And then Jack and I will usually wrap it up and work for another hour or 2 to get everything kind of like buttoned up. And then if it's getting sent over to mixing or mastering, we'll send it off to whoever's doing that. If JP's working on the mix, then we'll send it over to him.
Yeah, and that's crazy when you say like, oh, we're going to send it over to mastering, and it's literally like the next room, which is, that's pretty cool because, you know, in the business when you're like, we're going to send it to mastering, it's like, oh God, how long is this going to take? You know, like weeks, months before someone masters it. And here you just,
it's really nice
airdrop it,
having it be streamlined like that. Like when we're in a session and we need some guitar parts done, I was telling you earlier, like Jack will keep working with the artist and I'll run to my room in my studio and I'll track the guitars and then I'll airdrop them back to him and he'll just throw them into the session. So it's getting done twice as fast almost. And the artist isn't waiting around and they're getting continuously inspired and the process is moving and we can get it done quickly and with quality because we're not sacrificing time. It's just another hands-on.
That's awesome. Yeah, just get everything out of the way of the creative process. That's so cool, man. This is awesome. I like it. What kind of genres do you like mainly stick with a certain type of music? Or are you guys like all over the place or?
Well, we try to do whatever the client wants, but we seem to keep on getting clients that like a certain genre. That happens to be right now. It happens to be a lot of country leaning things, especially since Beyoncé released her album. Every artist that comes in, 95% of them want something that's more country influenced or has like more organic instruments or things like that because that is what's trending right now. And obviously we're going to help them get to where they want to be. Yeah, for the last couple months at least, it's been a lot of country leaning or country adjacent genres, I would say. And also what's great because I love playing guitar and I get do a lot of weird things with guitars to make it sound like a mandolin or make it sound like a banjo. Or we got a banjo in the other day and the artist brought in a banjo and they're like, I don't know how to play it. Can you play it? And I was like, I can learn. And I went to the other room.
Banjos are cool.
Figured it out, played a part and came back and they're like, you played that? I'm like, yeah, I just figured it out.
Huh. That's weird how country, how like it used to be the genre that everybody hated.
Yeah.
You know, and now it's like everybody is going that way. I would have never thought. You asked me 10, 20 years ago what's going to be hot in 2024. I would have never told you. And country has always been its own thing. Like it's a huge business and like I'm not like undermining like what it is, but in the areas I've lived, like country was always like nobody listened to country.
The last time country music was like this big was Garth Brooks. And he was top of all the pops. He was top of everything
90s.
In the 90s. And then it kind of like took a big nosedive and not in the genre, just popularity wise. And then hip hop and all that kind of took over.
Yeah.
And everyone was all into that. And there's a lot of great stuff has come out of that. But now we're starting to get that rise back up into it. And Morgan Wallen is now battling Garth Brooks for like the longest number one. And it's really odd to see this massive shift in what is popular and how everyone loves it. And Taylor Swift, no one liked Taylor Swift's country stuff, but now
that's what I was gonna say.
Everyone is on the Taylor Swift train. I don't know. It's a odd. I would have never thought it either.
Yeah. It's so strange to me. But it's good. What about Post Malone? Post Malone is doing country too? No?
Post Malone is like assembling the Avengers of he's grabbing every big name country pop star, and
I saw that shit on Instagram. I was like, no way.
And those songs are like crushing it. And it's the country fans are like, they're like, yeah, we're in. And like the pop fans are like, yeah, it's Post Malone, I'm in. And with country not being unpopular anymore, people are just like embracing it. And
well, that's good.
I think that's a good thing. Like,
yeah.
I don't think there should be genre hate. It's just like, if you like the song, great. If it feels authentic, great.
Yeah, I went to Tennessee once with my mom on a little vacation, and I learned more about it. And I didn't really realize before then how crazy big it was. Like how, like, it's just like so many, it's like a whole nother music business. It's nuts.
It's its own thing.
Yeah. And you can't describe it. Like we went and we saw like the Grand Ole Opry, and we went down, downtown, and like every single bar that you walk by in Nashville. Have you ever been? Mm-hmm. Just every bar, every restaurant or bar you walk by, you just walk down the main drag, someone's playing music. And it's...
Those players are some of the best in the world.
All amazing. Yeah.
They're so good.
It's crazy to me.
If you go to Nashville and you think you're good, you're not. Like, you are going to get a big ego check real quick, and you're going to realize, I have to hone my craft for like 20 years to even get close to some of these. Because it's all the prodigies and all the people who have been working those sessions for years. And you get there and you're like, the guy at this little dive bar is better than anyone I know.
Yeah.
And he's also a songwriter with like 10 number ones, and you don't know his name. And that's crazy.
Yeah. It always blew my mind. So yeah, I definitely have a deep appreciation for it. It's not my particular favorite genre, but I do appreciate it. So you're contributing to the...
So I grew up in the middle of nowhere. So that was the country music that I listened to. Like, that influenced a lot of why I started playing guitar and how I learned instruments, because that's what I was hearing on the radio when I was working blue collar jobs. I was working on a farm, driving tractors, doing things that like are happening in the song. So I related to a lot of...
Where were you from before? Chicago.
So I grew up in the middle of nowhere. The closest town, or like big town city, is Peoria, Illinois, and we were like 40 minutes north of that. Like the closest gas station was like 10 miles, and so like I was surrounded by cornfields. I worked on a farm, grew up the very country lifestyle, and then went off to college. Then did a couple of years at a community college, and then moved up to Chicago and went to Northern Illinois, and then I kind of just stayed up there. I got a job with Apple and stayed there, and then moved out here, kind of the shortened, condensed version of that. So, like, I grew up very rural and then moved to the city and was like, oh, this is great, too, and learned how studios worked in Chicago, and then came out here, and now everyone's like, yeah, and we want country. And I'm like, I can do that. I understand how country works, because I grew up listening to it, but the country then is very different than now. But there's a lot of similarities for sound-wise, or how a guitar should sound, or whatever it is. But I always say country has the best stories, but sometimes people don't relate to those stories if they didn't grow up in that experience.
Yeah.
And there's so many different genres in country. It's like saying you play in a rock band, like classic rock,
kind of rock,
heavy
rock,
like
pop rock. Yeah.
Death, like, is it metal? Is that rock? Like, it's just like there's so many. It's very open. So like right now I'm working with the artist, and there's a lot of like trap influences on the drums, because of like Post Malone and Morgan Wallen are doing these more trap-ish drum sounds. But then there's really, like, I'm playing a Martin guitar here on one side and then a Nashville strung guitar on the other, so it sounds like this big 12 string. So you're getting this like really bright sounding guitar that's reminiscent of like Fleetwood Mac, but it's still very country sounding, but you're just, the genres are all blurring together right now.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm down with that. That's how all of my stuff kind of is. It's just whatever I was influenced by at that point in time, and I'll mix it in with, stuff I love, and I don't think I was ever able to put a genre on my music. That's why I was always like random, memorandum. That's where the name came from. So it's fucking random. I love to hear songs on the radio. I love to hear songs get suggested to me that like are different, you know, and people aren't afraid to like mix that stuff up. Like Post Malone, good example. Like I never really cared for his music, but when I listened to it, I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like it's different than what's actually out there. You know, it's not mainstream, but it's mainstream.
Yeah.
It's very confusing, I guess.
The thing that's interesting to me about a lot of Post Malone's music is that he doesn't have a lot of chords. It's a lot of bass, which is driving the song, which means he can pretty much sing whatever he wants over it because there's no chord saying it's major or minor or whatever it is. So he's always going to sound good, and there's nothing conflicting with his voice too. So like there's a lot of drum and bass, not actual drum and bass, but like drums and bass frequencies, and then he's singing. Because there's no chords, you're just listening to his voice, and it just draws you in a way that's unique and different. And now he's influencing how country is perceived too. Music industry is so weird and so cool, and I'm forever going to be addicted to it. I could talk forever on all this weird stuff.
I wish we could play some stuff. That sucks. All of your clients are like, I have to check with my publisher.
I gotta check with the publisher, or if they're like, it's not out yet, don't play it. Which is fine.
Yeah.
I was working with a producer from the Netherlands last Monday. He comes in. He's like, obviously, I want you to play guitar. He's like, I want you to make like the weirdest guitar sound. And I was like, okay. So we took a little tennis like D vibrator, and I stuck it on the strings of the guitar, and it made it sound like this really like plunky, like almost nylon thing. And I was like, how are you going to make this sound cool? And we played it, and he sent me back, I think, like 2 days later. And he was like, yeah, we're sending it off to an artist. They love how this sounds because it doesn't sound like a guitar. And I was like, this is the best, because I love making guitar sounds that sound weird.
Yeah.
That don't sound normal. Because once you get to a certain point, most people can record a good guitar sound, make it sound like a guitar. Yeah. But the weird sounds are the ones that always seem to stick out and I think are so cool to create because you're being creative. You're not being, oh, this is the formula, I'm going to follow it.
I've always loved when guitarists can do crazy shit with their guitars. Like, Tom Morello, for example, like growing up with Rage Against the Machine, it always blew my mind what he could do with his guitar. Like, that does not sound like a guitar, but you knew it was a guitar because he's made statements saying, like, I don't use anything but a guitar. He'll use pedals and stuff, but he doesn't use synthesizers. He doesn't use anything. All of that stuff. He'll go in and like rewire his amps backwards in order to get specific sounds. Like, they're not artificial. He will use the guitar. So I always thought that was so awesome when, he would just make that thing do the like turntable scratches with it and everything. Like, that opened up my mind as a kid, like with what a guitar could do. And I always appreciated when guitarists were very creative with the sounds and they weren't just boring old like traditional guitar playing. So is that your main instrument, is guitar? Is that what you started with?
I started on piano when I was 6.
Okay.
And I feel very comfortable on piano, but I would say a majority of the work I'm hired to do is on guitar. I got very lucky. My parents put me in a lot of different lessons. I begged them to let me stop playing piano when I got into high school because it wasn't cool. And they said, you'll regret it. And I said, no, I won't. And a couple of years later, I was like, I regret it. I should have kept going. But they also let me take guitar lessons all the way till I got to college. I had an incredible teacher. He was like the flat picking champion, like bluegrass guitarist for the United States. And he was so talented. He made the most difficult things look easy, and it made me want to be able, like, I can learn how to do that. I couldn't. I'll never get to half as good as he is. He's so incredible. He taught my sister mandolin at the same time, because once you win the championship or whatever in this flat picking contest, you can't compete for another year. You have to take a year off.
Wait, what is flat picking?
It means you're playing guitar with a pick, not with your finger. It's not like finger style.
Okay.
So it's like a specific kind of bluegrass type of country Nashville-y sound.
I never heard of that.
So he took the year off. He won it on guitar. Then the next year he goes and wins it on mandolin. And then he goes back the next year and like wins it on guitar.
He found the loophole.
He found the loophole.
Damn.
And I'm like, this guy is too talented to be like going back and forth between instruments. But I was really lucky because I learned a lot from him. And he was really hard on me because I was always a super like kind kind of like lazy kid because music came naturally. So I was like, oh, I don't need to practice. And he would come back and he's like, you haven't practiced. I can tell.
He could tell, yeah.
And I was like, yeah. He's like, well, I'm not giving you a lesson this week. Go practice. You're going to practice for the whole lesson. And like that taught me to actually practice. And so I always showed up to learn. I feel very comfortable on guitar. If someone's like, here, can you play this on guitar? Most of the time I'm like, oh yeah, I can play that. I can learn how to play that. So I get hired for a lot of guitar because it's what's in vogue right now. And I feel like I can pick it up and do it. There's some pianists that are just going to blow me out of the water because they're so good at knowing all these classical songs and all these things. I can get by, like I can play stuff, but it's not I don't feel as comfortable to be hired to be playing piano. So as you can see, I have a couple guitars around here. And I play
10 guitar. No, 11. Couple. That's a couple. 11 guitars.
Yeah, couple.
Yeah, I mean, most guitarists start off on piano. I started off on guitar. I had no idea how to play a piano. My parents never put me in like piano lessons or anything. I don't know why. We weren't really a musical family. They were all athletes, like my brothers and myself. I was the only one who was a musician. You know, I took guitar lessons for a little while, and I played guitar in a lot of bands. I played guitar for myself, and I would like record songs on my own. But I've been playing since I was 15 years old, and I still suck. Like it never like clicked for me, you know? I was in choir my whole life, like through like elementary school, middle school, high school, like chamber singers. And then, you know, I sang a lot in a couple bands, and I could get by on guitar if I can make it do what I needed to do, but I'm naturally not a great guitarist. So I always liked plucking around. I could play, you know, songs if I want. I know the basics, but it was never a natural thing for me. But I love music so much, and I would, you know, figure it out. You know, piano, I could poke around and get what I need to get for the song, but I wouldn't be able to tell you what chord I was playing or anything. Like I failed like music theory like twice in high school, so it's just like that shit is awful for me. I don't know why, but I need to make it. You know, I still need to make music. I can jam out, you know, I can hold my own, but
I don't know if I'll ever understand guitar like fully like some people do.
Dude,
like,
some of the guys I've played with,
stuff, they know so much. But I think so far I think there's two different types of guitarist. There's the ones that play live, and there's the ones that record. And they're two different skills. And once I figured that out, those are two different types of guitar players. I had to relearn how to play guitar to record, because if you're really good at playing live and you can solo and you can do all this stuff, but you don't know how to record, it's a totally different, like we have artists that come in here all the time that are really good live at playing guitar, and they go out and play tons of shows and everyone loves them. And then they come in and they try to record the guitar the same way twice and they can't do it.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to be really meticulous and really clean, and you have to be able to play the same thing over and over. And that's a totally different skill that I had to learn once I started recording guitars, because I just like jamming out with my friends and playing in basements and like going and playing shows and going on tour, and that's totally different than recording a guitar the same way twice or 3 times or 5 times in a row.
It's a great way to put it. I never thought about that because I suck at guitar live, but you put me in a studio, I can do it over and over and over again the same exact way, or at least keep doing it until I get it right in the same way. You know, I know exactly what you're talking about. I was always, because that's what I did. I'd be in my bedroom for hours just trying to play that one little fucking section like perfectly, you know, and I would have to do it the same way every time. So yeah, I can, and that's what I mean by like I can get by on it if I could make it do what I need it to do. But playing live, I've been in bands and played guitar in bands, and it's hard.
There's also like other skills that help and hinder. Like if you don't have patience, it's really hard to be a studio musician. But if you don't have like charisma, or you don't like being in front of people, it's hard to be a live musician, because like you're not feeding off the crowd, or you're not enjoying the spotlight.
Yeah, I've only met one guitarist in a band that I was in that could do both really, really well. Like it was scary how even playing live, he could play the same thing like perfectly over and over. And then in the studio, he would play the same thing over and over. He was so meticulous and like perfect. He was the closest that I could think of that could do both pretty easily. Shout out Pete Cornell. He was another one who could just do crazy sounds on his guitar. His solos were always very original and different, and you'd always look forward to see what he was going to do on a song. But
those are the best types of people to play with too, because you know that they're going to be incredible no matter what position what they get thrown in too. So
you almost get mad and angry about it.
Yeah, you're
so fucking good. You suck because you're so good.
It's the best compliment when someone's like, "You're annoyingly good," whatever it is. Like you're like, "Dude, you played that annoyingly well." So like, I'm gonna have to go home and practice now.
So have you been in bands, or you just been solely studio guitarist?
I was in bands 3 or 4 in high school and after. We sucked because I sucked. Like, in the middle of nowhere, there's not a lot of musicians.
Yeah.
And so, like, you kind of just, whoever, oh, you play drums? You want to be my drummer? It's just like, it's not as, you get out here and everyone you meet is somehow in music, it seems like, or they're in film. So, and a lot of actors will be like, yeah, I also play guitar. And that's another conversation. But... like, I was always trying to do music, but it was just really difficult. And then when I went to college, I was like, I'm done with bands. Like, I'm sick and tired of relying on other people.
Yeah.
And I'm sick and tired of relying on people to record me. So I was like, I got to learn how to record. I got to learn how to figure out what gear I need, what microphones to get, what types of guitar do I need. And I started trying to do that second or third year of college. Man, I go back and listen to those demos now, and they are rough. Like, I was learning.
Start somewhere,
but you got to start somewhere, and you got to start figuring it out, and you just got to not give up.
Yeah.
Because if you think you're gonna sound exactly like the radio when you start recording, that's just not the case. There's so much that goes into it. So I got tired of doing band stuff because I was like, I just got to figure it out myself, I guess. And I never wanted to be a studio musician or like a music producer. I wanted to write songs and I wanted to go play them. Like, that was the thing. And then as I was starting to learn it, I started falling in love with the process, like how much goes into it and all that. I think in my last year of college, my uncle was going on a little tour. He's a drummer for a band, and their lead guitarist had double booked. The guitarist was going to play a cruise, and they needed someone to fill in for like 3 dates. And so I practiced up all the guitar licks, and Johnny was a guitarist, Johnny Perrin. He's an incredible guitarist, also a drummer, and I was like, I gotta learn how to play guitar as well as him if I'm gonna be playing all his guitar parts.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I went on the tour, and it was super fun. And I got back, and I was like, yeah, I don't think I can be in a band and sit in a van for hours on end. Like, I learned it's fun, and I loved doing it, and all the guys that were great. But I was like, I don't want to have to keep on relying on other people to be like, oh, I can't make it to practice, or I can't do this. I'm like, well, I can go make the drums on my computer, and I can record the bass, and I'll go play the guitar, and I'll write the song, and I'll bring a friend over, and we'll write the song together, and if it's not good, we'll write another one. And that process was way more liberating and free, and I didn't have to worry about, can I work my job, my 9 to 5, and do music, because I'm always trying to take it off to go tour. I can create the songs I want to create and work and have that stability, and that's what's felt really great. And then pretty soon I've met a bunch of people, and now we're just doing a ton of production for a bunch of different people.
Yeah, it was very similar to my experience too. It's just, trying to do bands, fucking the drummer's drunk, or the bassist can't get a ride, or whatever. Like, it was so frustrating, and then eventually learning that, I can just do this myself. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm in a band or doing it on my own, as long as I can make music, like, that's what makes me happy. So, like, learning about, all the stuff to buy, having what I need to be able to create that music whenever I want. That's the thing that I always promised myself, was as long as I can make music, I'll be happy. Doesn't, whether it's in a band or whether it's by myself. But then, like you said, I don't want to rely on other people to do that. And then going into the studio with the band and having other people record us, that was fucking annoying. Like, I would just rather do it myself, or ourselves. And, we've taken that approach before with a band, and we did all the tracking ourselves. And then we finally went and got it mastered somewhere else, and it worked out good, but it was such a long, tedious process. And playing live was great too, but it's exhausting. And again, that's kind of like what separates the people who actually make it to the people who just kind of do it as like a hobby, is being able to like give everything up for it. You know, like you don't have a life anymore. You can't work another job. Like you have to literally give everything up to make this your dream. And that's another reason why I got on the production side of it too, was you can make money off of that part of it, you know, and you can still make your own music. So it's a great skill to have, especially here too, when everybody wants to, you know, make something. You know, everybody's creative over here on this coast.
All that being said, though, not being reliant, I really appreciate, but I also really love working with talented people. I think if you can get a good collaboration, it can level you both up in a way that you can't do by yourself. So I think not being stuck in a band has allowed me to work with a lot more people and find those people that I want to keep working with. So like I think working in collaboration with really talented people is super important, and that's I really like the studio process because I get to work with a lot of different people.
Yeah,
and see
you're not stuck with the same band over and over again.
Because then
relying on them
in a band, you become brothers, and then you start fighting. Mm-hmm. And it's not that you hate each other; it's just that like that's just inevitable.
Yeah,
and like that's not always conducive to a great work environment or great music.
Yeah, and we're speaking for ourselves.
Yeah,
we've had similar experiences, but yeah, I mean, some bands could go years and years, decades, and still be able to output really creative stuff, and you know, more power to them. But the band thing, I went out on a bang with my last band, and I'm okay with that. Like, I'm good. We had an album, we went on tour. I'm done. You know.
I also think like it's way easier to. Hypothetically, I don't know, I haven't done it, but if you write really great music and you make some really great music, you can assemble a band to go live and play it. But
lots of the greats
do that. They make the music and people respond to it and they really like it, and then they're like, well, we want you to come on tour. That's way more exciting because then you have people that want to see you, instead of going on tour and trying to convince people that your songs are good. Are two different things in my opinion. And you might have great songs, but I think if you make the music first, the music is priority over trying to market yourself. I don't know. Marketing's another thing too with TikTok and all. How you present yourself really does matter now. It's really difficult because you can make some really great music, and if you don't market yourself, no one's ever going to hear it.
Yep.
I usually start ideas. Jack starts ideas, I start ideas, and then we kind of figure out which ones we like. And then we work together to get them to where we want them to be in like a way that's inspiring for the artist to hear. And then we'll show the artist, whoever we're working with, and then they'll usually write something on top of it, or we'll help them write something on top of it. So I came up with this guitar part.
So do people come to you with projects and then you help build it, or do they come to you with like a blank slate or just lyrics? Or
a lot of times it's like, I want something that sounds like this, or in a similar vein as this, or these are the last 5 songs I've done. I want another song, or I got to put out another song, because artists have to put out a lot of music right now just to stay relevant, to stay atop of people's feeds, to stay in. They're putting out single after single like every 2 weeks. If they're not doing every 2 weeks, they're doing like once a month, just so there's something every time, and then they get 10 songs and they put them together as an album. That's just kind of how, because attention spans have shortened, you got to stay on top of it and you got to be continuously creating. Artists want to streamline that process. So instead of them having to write songs and then have the music be created for it, a lot of times they want the music to be like a good chunk of it ready. They write the song over that, and if they like the song, then we finish the production and the song gets put out. So it just makes that process, the time of creating that song, go way down. Because a lot of songs are the same in a way. It's not formulaic, but it's just you're going to need a bass, you're going to need drums, and you're going to need some chords or instruments of some sort. And so like we'll get that started in a certain vein, and then we'll give them like, here's 5 songs. And they'll pick 2, or sometimes they pick all of them. They pay us for the song, and then we get royalties on the back end. And then if they don't pick a certain one, we'll just give it to the next artist, because we usually have several artists in the same genre or the same that are looking for certain things. Because let's say they all want a Post Malone country song. If we make a Post Malone country song sounding beat, there's going to be 4 or 5 artists that are going to be like, I want it. I'm going to write to it today. And then whoever gets to it. And obviously we have relationships with certain artists that, like, we send it to certain artists first, because we have an artist that we work with. His name is Ollie Joseph. And he's put out probably 15 or 20 of our songs already. And so, like, if we create something that's really dope, we're going to send it to him first, probably. Because we're like, well, he's been really helping us and we've been helping him. It's like a great relationship.
Yeah.
So we're going to get that song to him. If he doesn't like it, no hard feelings. It's just maybe not the right for that project that he's working on. We'll send it to someone else. And
so when you guys make something or you come up with an idea, do you kind of know who it's going to go to first? You're like, oh, this person's going to dig this one. Let's send it to him and see, right? Like, you kind of have an idea of what their style is.
Like, if Jack and I, we don't have any projects in the pipeline, hypothetically, or we're like, we need to create today. We'll go in and we'll be like, let's try to do it in this vein. And then if we create something that's like really cool, that we'll just send it down that road towards that artist. But if something odd gets made out of it and it's like, that's not going to go to that artist, this one's cool for this other artist, we'll send it to that artist. So it's kind of like we are making judgment calls of what we think the artist is going to like. And Jack is really good at, like, kind of knowing where the artist is heading and what is, like, where we can push to go a little bit in a newer territory for them. Because artists like new things that are new and exciting. Yeah. They don't want to do the same thing over and over. Mm-hmm. And Jack's really good at that. So Jack writes a lot of guitar parts, and he will then send them to me, and I will replay them. Because he hears things in a way that is really unique, and he can put stuff together really well. And he knows I can play the guitar part that he writes better than him. Mm-hmm. And there's no ego about it. Because, like, I don't care that I didn't personally write that guitar part. If I can help the song get better, great. If he can write a part that makes the song better, great. Like, we don't care. We're going to get this song to where it should be. This is a part I came up with that I'm still trying to figure out. Like, this is real rough. Like, there's not really a lot of processing or anything on it. So this is a guitar part. So it's just like this little, like, lick kind of thing to get like a song. I'm like, okay, that sounds kind of unique, but also sounds very in a country realm. And so then I'm going to double it, put it left and right to make it feel wider. So it, obviously in a song, it's going to feel good. And then I put a Nashville tuned guitar. Nashville tuned guitar is like the 6 strings that would be on a 12 string. If you just separated them out and put them on another guitar. So the top 3 strings are, I think, an octave higher. And so it sounds like this. So if you were going to combine them with the regular, it'd sound kind of like a 12 string.
Oh, yeah. But you did them separately.
Yeah. So then you can pull, so you have each one, if I want to process that different, or I can put the high one on the right and the low one on the left.
Yep, space them out.
So it gives you a lot more control later on to what you want or what you want it to sound like. So I would start building this out, and I'd put some bass with it, probably, in guitar. Let's see what bass I have.
You play the bass or like synths first?
So with this one, I'm like, okay, if I want to go in like the Morgan Wallen, Post Malone vibe, they're probably not going to actually have a bass. They're probably going to use like 808s, which is so odd to be playing this really country lick. But like then I would just like Jack is way better at bass and way better at like drums and doing it, putting it together. But I want to get an idea of like, does it kind of sound good before I send the idea off to him? So I'll put like this 808.
Just to fill out the
just
bottom.
Fill out the bottom, and then I'll be like, well, it probably needs some guitar strums or something. And I think I'd put that over here. So you can kind of just see it's getting built. Like the strums are just going to be, here, let's do just the strums so you can hear that. Left and right. Super simple, like diamonds. And then And I was like, well, they might want something on top later, like a little guitar. So I just put that over the top to make it feel a little bit countryer. And it's kind of messy right now, and I probably wouldn't have them both playing at the same time, but I wanted them to work together so he could cut between the two if he wants to, or doing that. And then, obviously, if you ever want to make something really country sounding, all you have to do is add a pedal steel.
Good old pedal steel.
You start a song like that, like the listener already knows that they're in that realm.
Yeah.
So then the singer can just go right into being like talking about whatever the cliche is they want to say. I was like, well, this sounds a little too country for what I'm kind of going for. So I was like, if I just take like some trap drums and I just kind of put them across here, I just like, it doesn't sound country.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted. And then a little cross stick. And I just filter it way out, and then put some. I got this loop off Splice. It's like this really industrial, thick drum sound, and I'm like, I want like a rhythm or a little groove to it, but I don't want it to sound like that. So I distorted it and EQ out the highs and lows, and then put a transgate on it, so it just like kind of chops it. So it's kind of like this hi-hat, but it's dirty. So then when you put it with this cross stick, they kind of work against each other. So you're getting this little groove, and you put this kick and snare over it. And we're not country, but then you put it over. And now they have something that they can be like, okay, if I want to rap on this, I can-ish. And if I want to sing on it, I can, and I'm blending two genres. And I'd send that probably to Jack and be like, okay, make it sound better. And then we pitch that to an artist and be like, is this something that you'd be into? And then we build it out to get it like, if I want to put some nylon guitars on it, like here.
You kind of have all the pieces there in case.
So when Jack
whatever
gets it,
they decide they want to do with it, you've got it all there.
He can be like, okay, this feels like a verse, this feels like a hook, this feels like, and he'll just send it, and then they'll have like kind of a instrumental to a song that's not been written to, which is, it's just really open, and it's not like really stuck in its own way. You can kind of mold it to whatever. If they want to make the hook longer, we can make the hook longer.
Yeah.
If they write something cool to it, or when they write something cool to it, they send it back, and we finish the production, and we send it off to mix and master. So it gets. Sick, so this is just like kind of the basic gist of the idea, because I want to get different parts. So when they start it off, it sounds a certain way, and like I tried a P bass in here because I wanted to have the P bass here at the beginning, and I'm just like, I can put the P bass in and take out the 808s. And it's just a different flavor for him to use if he wants it later.
Yeah.
And I could pull up my bass and play it, or I can just have it go MIDI in. It doesn't, like, at this point, it's MIDI with the bass. But once they like the song and they want it to feel better, I'll probably play it in with the actual bass.
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask you.
I steer away from anything. There's a lot of guitar plugins that are like, you don't have to play guitar, just play it on your piano. To me, those never sound real.
Yeah, and I've never heard a good guitar sound.
But I think they're really great for writing guitar parts, because when you're playing piano, you play things that you wouldn't play on guitar. So like I get stuck in my own ways, and I'll play an E chord the same way. But all of a sudden I'll do an E sus4 on the piano, and I'll be like, oh, I could do that on the guitar. And then I play that on guitar, and it's like, oh, that adds a different flavor that's cool and helps the song be less generic. So I think it's really good to kind of jump back and forth between what you're comfortable with and making it a little bit different. That can help make the song feel a little bit better in the long run. So I don't know. I use both as a tool, but I would prefer to have it be all live instruments, then chop it up and use that audio in a way that's not really, you can't have in a real scenario. I don't know. It's just try to make things different, I guess.
Yeah, nothing compares to playing something on a real instrument, you know? It just adds a whole nother level of realness and authenticity. I mean, that sounds freaking amazing. You could tell right off the bat that they're not fake guitars. They're not like samples. They're like, they're played because they're not perfect, you know? And you have the analog sound of it too. I can tell. I don't know how many people can tell right off the bat if it's real or not, but I could definitely tell, and it definitely adds to it, whether you know it or not. Yeah,
I think getting good sounds at the source is really important. So, like, if I'm playing a guitar thing, if I was just playing a Martin here and going directly into my Apollo into here, it would sound completely different than what I have it going through, because I have it going through 76 here into, like, an LA2A, but first it's hitting a Neve pre, and then, like, all those little choices that I've made over the years to understand how I want to process this signal before it even gets to my computer changes. So, like, when I look at this guitar on the screen, I'm not processing it a lot after the fact. I mean, it will get processed when it gets mixed, and it'll get EQ'd, and it'll get compressed and stuff like that. Sure. But if the sound is good going in, it just makes the job so much easier. You're using good quality ingredients, you're going to have a better meal.
Yep.
We always do me and Jack talk a lot about production, kind of like cooking, making sure we do our prep work and making sure we have everything in place and we have all the right ingredients before we even start putting the meal together or the song together. If you don't have the pizza dough and you're trying to make a pizza, the pizza's never going to turn out. Like, it's just not right. So, like, we got to make sure we have all the different instruments that we need for that track, or we've done the research and we know the recipes and we know how other people have done it. So then we can make something similar or make something even better.
Yes, chef.
Yeah, we say yes chef a lot just because of the show.
Yeah, I mean, what's the saying too? Like, shit in, shit out, you know? Like, it's like whatever you put into it is what you're going to get at the end, and putting that amount of thought into it. It's like when I used to teach, like, digital photography for people who used to shoot film, like at Apple, when you know, people like professional photographers were changing over from shooting film to going digital, and they're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. You know, it was crazy to see how important it was for them to get the shot in the viewfinder and not rely on all the stuff afterwards. You know, like nowadays people take 900 photos and they're like, oh, I'll pick the best one out later and I'll crop it later and da-da-da. But back when you used film and back when we used tape, it was like you needed to get it in there the way you wanted it the first time. Mm-hmm. You know, you had to put that thought ahead of time, and it pays off. I mean, it sounds amazing, and getting the shot in the camera and getting the right sounds into the computer is really important. So I'm glad that it's nice to hear.
It's a big part of the process, making sure you can get the sound right. You can only polish a turd so much. Like, you get bad sound or you get a bad photo,
just do it again.
You can't Photoshop. You can a bit, but there's a certain point where you just might as well replay it. Like, we'll have parts and we'll be sitting on them for a couple weeks or something, and then I'll walk in and I'll be like, I should just re-record that, shouldn't I?
Yeah, because you'll fuck around with it so much, and you're like trying to fix it, and you're like, just whatever. Let's do it again.
But sometimes there's magic in that, like, first take, and so, like, if you didn't capture it right, you can't ever recapture how you did it or how you played it. Like, you might have messed up when you played it, and that mess up feels better than the technically correct way.
Yeah.
And if you recorded it poorly when you were doing it, you're out of luck. So like, we've made a lot of conscious effort to make sure we're recording it at a higher quality and making sure that we're getting a good take the first time, because a lot of times that first take gets used, and sometimes that can be a little scary to think about, that like, oh, I got to get it right now, otherwise I'm going to have a hard time recreating it later.
Yeah.
It's part of the process. It's part of the fun, being creative.
Yeah. And it's fun too, because sometimes you do a take and it's not the best take, and then when you go to redo it better, you just can't. It doesn't have that same feeling. I've tried to redo whole songs before, and I've been like, I'm just going to keep the crappy one because it's all there. Everything I want is there. It doesn't sound great, but it's like, it's the best version of it that I'm ever going to do, you know, because you could try and try, and it comes out wrong. It just wasn't it's not there like it was when you first did it.
That's one reason why singers really care about the microphone they're using. And we obviously care a lot, but like you got to make sure if they're doing a good vocal, you can't let that clip. You can't let anything saturate if you don't want it to. You got to make sure your compression isn't slamming. You got to make it right, because the vocal is one of the hardest things to record and do consistently over and over, because their voice is going to wear out over the course of a session if you're not careful. And if they're hitting some high notes, your microphone matters, because they Celine Dion right at the end and they clip it. You're going to be so mad.
Can you do that again? No.
That was a one-time thing.
Can't.
And you lost it. And they probably won't work with you again.
Yeah. They're like, you didn't get that?
You didn't get the one time?
Sorry.
Because what happens in the studio is the best take that they'll ever get, and then they'll go
and they know it too.
And they know it, and they go play it live, and they drop it down a key or two, because they don't want to mess up that high note.
Yeah.
So when I'm creating an idea, if I come up with a guitar riff or something that I think is there's potential there, I want to make sure I record it and get that idea down, but sometimes it's just not right. So like that same song that we were just listening to, that's I think the third time I've gone at it, because I'm like, this is a cool idea, but I don't want to send it off to Jack and give him the wrong impression of what the idea is. If you poorly execute it or you don't do it justice, you just wasted all the time doing it, because I send it and he's like, it's okay, but I know that there's something cool there and I'm just not putting in the time or effort. So like I did it here on June 25th. I did this version. And it was just like, it kind of felt too roomy, and the guitar wasn't right, and the slides weren't super clean, and there was a lot more squeaks. And there was just like kind of basic hi-hats. And I was like, it's kind of too fast. It's not quite right. So then I went in 2 days later. Did it on a different guitar, did it with different processing, and it felt too squashed. And I started putting in some of the pedals, and I was like, okay, it's kind of getting there, but it's just not where I want it. So then I did this last version. And I was like, I felt like slowing it down, letting it breathe more, giving it way less compression, just get it less in your face, felt like a better presentation of what the song could be. Because then it allows being like, here's the basic ingredients. Now let's work with it. And so this was the 25th, 27th, and then yesterday. So like over the course of 4 or 5 days, I kind of had to sit with it. And I probably spent 30 minutes each time on it.
You just kicked it around a little bit.
Just kicked it around. Because I don't want to rush it, but I don't want to give up on it because it just didn't sound quite right.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I think it's a cool riff. I haven't heard someone do that in a bit. And I was like, let's work on it. And so now I'll probably send that off to him and be like, hey, what do you think about it? Because in the end of the day, we're all just trying to impress our friends and make cool stuff and have fun.
Yeah, and I think anybody could use that, really. That could be like, it's cool how you make music that anybody could make their own, you know, regardless of what genre they're in. Like you said, they could rap over it, they could sing over it. I think that's really cool how you can create for such a wide audience.
And I was also thinking about taking that same lick and putting it on an electric guitar and seeing how indie I could make it, or how like Midwest emo I could take that. Because that lick isn't really, once you put it on a different instrument, it's just a different thing.
Yeah.
Like if I wanted to slow it way down and make it shoegazy, like we can do that, throw it through a bunch of pedals and have some fun with it. It really just depends on who we want to send it to.
Yeah.
And like I'll make something like this and I'll send it to them and we'll work on it, and then 6 months from now someone will be like, hey, do you have anything that's kind of like this? And then they'll buy it then. Or it'll be like 3 days after we finish it. So it's you never know who or what or when it's gonna take a turn or get bought or someone likes it. Or
The pedal steel, you did that.
that was a plug.
MIDI instrument.
That was
MIDI
a plug-in,
instrument.
yeah.
It's really good.
It sounded really good. So when you just play it with a regular piano, it just sounds kind of fake.
Yeah. How do you
But-
play it?
Here, I'm just going to show you.
Yeah,
I think it's so cool.
Because it's a very unique instrument. If you don't know what a pedal steel is, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like a table, right? A little table, and it's like a flat guitar, and you pluck the strings,
and you have
facing downward,
and you have this big like steel bar on it to slide up and down, and it's a very country sound.
Yeah,
and it's really hard to emulate because you can't on the piano you can't bend notes up and down.
Yeah,
because you're stuck to whatever note it is. Mm-hmm. On a guitar, you can bend any stringed instrument. You can bend.
It's a combination of those two.
Yeah,
right?
and so when you're trying to, if I played this, like that sounds, but I can't bend it anyway. It just sounds like, oh, you're going up a scale, but with this keyboard I have this pitch bend built in, and so I can be like, and now we're like, okay, we're in a different realm because we can be like,
that's so crazy.
Like, obviously you can do it fake, but like if I'm doing something and I'm like, so like this, like you can go half notes, you can go whole notes, but I like to do like a whole step either way, so you can get a full on,
like a resolve.
Like if I'm doing a D here to E. And in a song, like that's going to make a world of difference compared to going.
Yeah. Huh.
And so there's little hacks you can get around to make it, because I'm not a pedal steel player.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It's a different thing that you have. It's a different skill.
Yeah.
Like we have one of the guitars.
You have to have an understanding of it in order to replicate it.
We took digitally. One of his Gibsons in that room, and we actually took a microphone stand and put it where the bridge should be. So then it turns it into like lifted way up. And then we took like these little glass bottle slides, and we can replicate a slide guitar, but not the pedal steel as well. And like once we found out we can just do it on here and just kind of, because all you need is the effect of it. Like no one actually cares if you're doing if you're actually setting up a thing and recording it. If it sounds like it and it's good enough, and it's just in the background to give you a feeling, you're painting the sky in the background. You're not painting the foreground. Like if it was a main part up front, obviously you'd want to hire someone to do it. But little, and it just looks so. It's like that's all it is. It's just a little plug-in that you pull up, and then you have a lap steel, which is like more like hearty feeling. So it's like,
oh yeah, that's for the more energetic, upbeat country songs.
Like you're getting those upbeat, like those bro country songs. We talk about like bro country, boyfriend country, classic country, because like there's like boyfriend country that's like I love you kind of things, and then there's like bro country that's like party on the tailgate, and then like you just make up cliches, and then there's like classic countries, like I don't know, like George Jones and like old like ballads, like I'll always love you type things. But like a lot of the bro countries, like Red Solo Cup kind of things, are transitioning. They're growing up and they're getting married and they're settling down, and then they start transitioning into this boyfriend country, and then we start. It's funny. It's we kind of make fun of them, but it's also like where a lot of these good like love songs are at. So it's just like you got to know what to call it, so you can be like, yeah, we're not shooting for. We're not doing girlfriend country or boyfriend country today. We're doing bro country, and like. We need to feel like a certain way. Yeah, so that would, on the lap steel, I'd probably put in more of those bro country songs because they're more upbeat and a little heartier. But you can use instruments for whatever you want.
I did not know we were going to talk about country music this much today. I had no idea, but that's so funny. It's taken over, huh?
It's everywhere.
Did you have a background on country before all of this? Before like you started to realize that you had to start making country songs?
I always told my little sister, I was like, when I turn 30, I'm gonna make country music. I just like I'm gonna put a country album out, because it like that was so like foreign and off the radar. Like that would never happen. Like I'll do a country record when I turn 30. I turned 30 this year, and everybody wants country music, and like because I grew up in it, I have an appreciation for it and I understand it to a certain extent. But like, I never thought I'd be making this much country music in LA. Like, I didn't ever move to LA and make country music. Like, no, you're supposed to move to Nashville and make country music. Like, but I think it's because Jack and I do a lot of things that are not quite country. They're like country adjacent with like a lot of the trap drums or like things 808s and things that are not. I think that's why people are like, oh, we want country-ish.
You're like sampling it kind of,
Yeah.
but the samples are yours. You're making them traditionally.
Yeah, one of the first times I came out here, I came out for a writing session with Ollie Joseph, who we do a lot of the country-ish things with, and we went to Big Bear and we wrote for like a week, and we kind of coined the term mountain pop, where it's like kind of pop music, but it's kind of mountainy, and it's not quite country, but like we say we're trying to do mountain pop, and he's been making this stuff for like 3 years now, and then all of a sudden everyone's kind of getting onto this train of like country-ish sounds, and he's already been in it for a while, and so like we always say, like, he's always like, yeah, Mountain Pop Studios, wherever he's at, whatever studio he's at, he calls it Mountain Pop Studios. Because our friend Jimmy in Colorado works with him a lot, and we do sessions with him virtually. We do a lot of virtual sessions over the internet because you can work with anybody in the world. And he's in Nashville now. He just moved to Nashville, and so we have all these different sounds that we were like been working on to make mountain pop, but it's just country-ish pop, hip hop. I love that genres are blending. It's allowing people to discover things that they wouldn't normally listen to. It's just kind of crazy. There's so much emphasis on country music right now. I can show you one other country kind of project because we're already talking about it. Sometimes artists don't want to write. They just want to be an artist. They want the perception of being an artist, and they want to have everything done for them, and then they want to perform because they're performers. So I think of them as more of performers instead of artists, but whatever they want to call themselves. So sometimes you have to make the entire song and write it all and do everything, and then show them the final product, and then they'll say, yes, I like it, I'm going to record it or cut it. Then they'll put the song out with their voice on it, and your voice just gets taken off, but you make way more money because you did all the work, you wrote it, you're getting most of the royalties. Or if they're paying you out for the whole song, they're going to pay you a check for the outright exclusive use of it. So sometimes I like to work on songs. I think this is a cool idea, I'm going to write it. Then I'll go in and I'll record. Let's open this up. It's kind of ridiculous how many you see.
Yeah, how many tracks is that? Holy crap.
Right now we're at 86. So it's kind of like, honestly, kind of a small project. And I think it's really important to make sure you label everything correctly so you know where things are at.
I love it.
So like,
my ADHD is thanking you right now.
So like I make sure I have everything. This is the verse, and this is the chorus, and this is
especially
where the keys
a
are.
Complex project like that, you have to, or you'll get lost so easily.
And then when you got to know where you're routing it, because which tracks are getting reverb and which ones aren't. So it's really important. As I've worked more and more in music, I understand that like I have to label things, or else I'm gonna waste time. So we'll start with something like on the verse here. So I'd start with something really kind of like this, since I'm like this, I want this to be a country song. I want it to be like a really lively kind of kick sound with a big crash right at the beginning. And kind of that's all I'm going to have for this verse, because I'm like, okay.
It's the build up.
Just kind of building. I don't want to give away the cards. And then you get to the pre, and you just keeps building it up. And then you get to the hook. You're obviously going to get some more kicks that are a little bit hitting, a little bit harder, kind of clipping a little bit, part of what it is. And obviously then you could have because you're getting that like just that groove going, because then when you start putting in like electric guitar here, and I'm like, well, that doesn't sound big enough for a hook. So we're going to have to add more guitars and acoustic guitars and strums. But you're like, it's still not fully there yet. So then you'll be like, well, I need a little like mandolin riff or something, or
Kind of carry the melody a little bit.
And you get something that's like, we kind of like a hypnotizer or like a drone to kind of like keep the listener in without having them realizing that it's a repeating melody. So then you start it. are just like...
Bro, that's like legit country right there.
And then when you're going to bring in some bass guitar,
banjo,
a little banjo to be in a pre, right before everything else breaks loose into like the hook kind of idea. I feel like we're clipping your rig, but like just like so you're building out everything, so when the artist hears it, they hear the final version, and then they're like, okay, I'm in. Like this feels good enough for me to record on and then mix. Then obviously like you'll build it out and you'll have your choruses, and then you'll want your last chorus to be slightly different. So like this one has like one chord change to be like, okay, we're feeling good about it, and then the listener's getting bored because they've already heard it a million times. And then just something to give them like, oh, and then back into whatever it is.
Yeah.
And just knowing that you have to build each little section out and have it just got to keep on. When you bounce out the waveform, it starts small, it gets big. It's like kind of like a story. Like you got to build up to these climaxes and then drop it back down.
Peaks and valleys, man.
Like you got to make it sound like it's got dynamics and you're telling a story, because you're trying to tell an entire movie in 3 minutes. And I think as a musician, it's really fun to build out these things, because like play a little keyboard here, and like that sounds like a normal keyboard, but it's really electric piano, like these little like this I can pull it up. It's just like this basic Logic modern like Rhodesic type sound with a piano sound. Here's the piano, and when you marry them together, it fills it out just a little bit more, so you're like, okay, this feels more in this country realm that I'm aiming towards, because you're always just trying to shoot for something that your brain is telling you this sounds that way. And there's so many parts in here that like I don't even remember doing, but I'm just like basic guitar arps, because you take that out, okay, without it, and then you put it in.
Yeah, it carries it.
Because we don't have a ton of percussion to keep it moving, so you got to put guitar parts that are going to keep it moving.
Yeah.
Until later on, then you take it out because you don't need it in the hook because the drums are kicking.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like, it's a dance that you're always playing. Like, so like this is something that I'll probably finish up in the next couple weeks and send it off to somebody and be like, hey, do you want this song or not? Hardest part for me is always writing like an actual like country lyric and melody to it, because that's where if you don't do it right, the whole song's ruined.
Yeah.
So like the track, I can be like, yeah, I feel really confident in this track that someone will take it. Like it sounds like it's a country track. But is the song worth it? If it's not, if I don't feel like the song that I write over it is good enough, I'll just send the track. If I write a song over this,
because they'll see it a certain way.
They'll see it a certain way,
the words,
and they'll be like, this song sounds great, but the words aren't right. They'll pass.
Yeah.
But if they hear just the beat, they'll be like, I could write something on that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, you either got to be, I think this song is incredible with the lyrics and they're going to love it, or it's, I just got to send the track.
Yeah.
Because you can't, if they hear a mediocre song over that beat, they're not going to be like, take the vocals off, I want to rewrite it. No one's going to do that.
Yeah.
They'll just be like, next song, because they see so much stuff coming through. So it's just like this game you got to kind of play. It's fun to make these, but these take more time than just getting ideas out and then working directly with the artist. So it's... Yeah,
because you have more decisions to make, basically.
You're doing
because
a lot more of the work.
It's not for you. You're not going to use it, right? Yeah. So you're making decisions based on, like, who knows what at that point.
Yeah.
Basically just what sounds good.
You got to think of what you want it to be, and then hopefully they like what your vision was. But I think it sounds good. It's just not mixed. It's obviously not mastered. It needs to be vocally written, and you got to make sure. There's so many variables that could make or break it. I love it. I love that he's so excited about this game.
Way too excited.
That's pretty much me when I'm making this stuff. I'm like, I get so jazzed about it, and then I'm like going into Jack's room and showing him, and then he's coming in and showing me something. We're just back and forth. We're little kids, and we're playing Logic as our video games.
Sounds like a dream come true, man.
But yeah, I feel very grateful that I've been able to afford to get the gear I've gotten and the work with the friends. I get to work with my friends at this point, and that's so amazing. And I mean, if we get a hit tomorrow, I'll be putting in my 2 weeks. So
you can fucking yeah. I mean, this all seems pretty scalable. It's like you have like a whole like production studio. You each have your own skill set, and seems like you guys work great together. So
yeah, I feel really lucky to be able to work with them and get along with them so well. And it's so easy to just get caught up in working the daily grind. But then when I'm working on music, it doesn't ever feel like a daily grind.
Yeah. And the time just disappears, and it just melts away, and then boom, you created something. People who don't know what it's like to be like creative like that, it's magic when something in your head becomes a reality. You were the reason it's here now. You know, I love that feeling. It keeps me going.
Making something from nothing, just pulling it out of the air. You wake up with an idea and you're like, you have to do it. It's almost a curse in a way, but like the best at the same time. I always joke that I was like, I could make way more money not doing this.
Yeah. Yes. We can't be a part of this life if we don't do it. You know, it's just not.
I feel like I would not be as happy, and I wouldn't want to, like, not in a depressing way, but I wouldn't want to live a way where I don't do music. Like, music brings so much to me in my life and has brought so many great people into my life, and it's such a big part of my life. I'm very grateful that, like, my parents made me learn piano when I was a kid. They made I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters. We all took piano lessons, and they're all probably better at it than me, but they don't play anymore. Yeah. And I just have stuck to it, and I can't quit at this point. I got to keep doing it because I'm slightly delusional, and I have a love for it, and I love it.
Well, thank you, Cal.
Thanks for listening to me babble. It was fun talking about all this stuff.
No, this is awesome. This is way more than I expected was going to happen. I got to be honest with you, I didn't have any questions to ask you. I thought it would just be a nice, natural conversation, and
it was fun.
I like digging into your music. So, what kind of music do you make for yourself?
I have like 3 or 4 different projects that I'm always currently working on because my brain doesn't allow me to stick to one thing. So I always have Sam Mitch, which I think is hilarious.
Sandwich. Oh.
Which is like all the country stuff I go, like if I'm writing something that's country and I'll just write, I'm in Sam Mitch. I told that to Nate at work one time and he just thought it was the funniest thing.
So you have I
have like little side project
alter
names
egos
for each, so I can
it.
get into that headspace. I'll be like, okay, this one's going to be like a Sam Mitch type thing. Or then I have, I want like the album to be called like Club, Sandwich by Club, and they'll be like Club Sandwich. It's just something dumb, just because you got to have fun with it. Yes. I have a project called Halifax Reverie. At the beginning of COVID, I was like, I want to do an instrumental project, and I was like, ChatGPT is cool. ChatGPT, come up with a band name and all this stuff. And Halifax was the first thing it suggested. And I was like, that's what I'm gonna name it. So I've made a couple of things with that and put that on like Spotify and YouTube or whatever. And it's just like piano instrumental stuff that like sometimes late at night if I need to like de-stress, I'll play some piano and sometimes I'll record it and throw it up there. I have a project that when I was in Chicago called Radio K. And I was doing that with one of my friends there, and then it's kind of evolved into me just making projects, just like anything that's not like, it's like more pop rock-y or something that's like more upbeat. I'll work it into that area. I don't really put stuff out under that. It's just in my brain. That's how I classify it. Mm-hmm. And then I have one called that's just me, Caleb Dietz. And that's more of like, if I want to go do something that's more indie, or like, I'm always shooting to be like Novo Amor or like Bon Iver or something like that's just like, maybe I'll sing with a falsetto on that one. So like falsetto voice, regular voice, low country voice, instrumental is kind of like the 4 different things that like, I feel like they're all separate.
Yeah.
I couldn't put those all in the same project because that wouldn't make sense to me. But it also, giving myself limitations between, like, just gives me so much more freedom. Be like, well, in Sam Mitch, I would never put a vocoder.
Yeah.
Like, but in the Bon Iver type stuff, like, I have to have a vocoder, or I have to sing in falsetto, which just challenges myself to like be creative in a certain vein instead of being like, there's endless possibilities. It gives me more of a guideline to go with because my brain is all over the place anyway. So it kind of gives me a route to go for.
Sounds like a great tactic. I like that.
And then you kind of know your target audience in a way that's like, okay, well, not that I don't try to make stuff for people, but I have to understand that the end result is for people to listen. So if I want it to all sound similar or cohesive. If I'm going to put out an album, I want it to all sound the same-ish. And so that dividing them up in my brain into different projects allows me to do that. But I haven't put out music for too long, and I should probably work on that. Been a little busy working on country music for other people.
I encourage you. Do it, Cal. Well, thanks again. I appreciate you talking to me.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
There you have it, folks. Caleb, Caleb, whatever you want to call him. He's down for whatever. Very interesting. I'm glad he got to show me some bits and pieces of his song, but country music, man. Woo! Yeah! Listen, go follow me on Instagram at TheeMemoshow. Follow me on YouTube. Just search The Memo Show, or you could do at TheMemoshow. I'm on Threads too. Hit me up on there. I post every once in a while. But thank you, Caleb. Thank you, Nathaniel Noble Jr. I appreciate it. And if you have some content or a project or something you're working on, art, music, whatever it is, film, hit me up. I'd love to have you on and talk. Stay tuned. Got lots of fun stuff for you. I'll see you next time.